Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I like to use my master's in English to discuss horror from an academic standpoint, but I also like to have fun just talking about books. And today's video is exactly what the title states, rapid fire wrap up for the months of April and May. So after a short intro, then we'll get started. I've already discussed several of the books that I read in April and May for different vlogs and other videos. So I will link each of those videos down in the description box below if you would like to hear more about those books. I read 7 books in the month of April, and I'm going to start with my lowest rated and work up to my highest rated. So, my lowest rated is a 2.5 star book, and that is Angel of the Underground. Next is a 3-star book for me, and that is Horns by Joe Hill. And I do talk about this book in my Read Like an Aries vlog, which will be linked down below. The next book that I want to talk about is a 4-star. It is also in my Read Like an Aries vlog, and that is All Who Wander Are Lost, Destination Horror Stories by Gemma Amore. The next book that I want to talk about is a 4.5-star book for me, and that is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. And I do talk about this book in my video. If you like this horror movie, then read this book. So the next books I have for you are all my 5 stars. And the first one of those is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones, and the sequel, Don't Fear the Reaper. And I am currently reading The Angel of Indian Lake, which is the final book in the trilogy. So I don't want to talk a lot about those books right now. I want to wait until I am finished with the entire trilogy. So the next book that I want to talk about that's a 5-star for me is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. And I do talk about this in my Good for Her horror video. And I will also say about A Certain Hunger that I am sure it's going to make my top 5 favorite reads of 2024. So that is a rapid fire April wrap up. So let's move to May. In the month of May, I read 10 books and I DNF'd 2 books. So the first book that I DNF'd was Zombie Bake Off by Stephen Graham Jones. I was listening to that on audio, which is the way that I typically like to read Stephen Graham Jones books. And this one was just too confusing. I wasn't interested in it, so DNF'd that. The other book, I probably got about 25% of the way through before I DNF'd it, and that was The Night Will Find Us. I liked the premise at the beginning of these young people going into the woods, and it kind of had some comps to the Blair Witch Project, but I just ended up DNFing it because I just could not get into the characters and the way that the story was going. And the next book I want to talk about, I am so sad to discuss it because it was one of my most anticipated books of 2024, and that is Immortal Pleasures by V. Castro. I absolutely loved this author's The Haunting of Alejandra. I actually have an in-depth video where I talk about The Haunting of Alejandra, and I will link that down in the description box below. But Immortal Pleasures, I gave 2 stars. The writing just felt very sloppy to me. The premise was really interesting. Again, we had an interesting premise that ended up falling flat. V. Castro does have a raw, visceral way of writing, which really worked for me in The Haunting of Alejandra, but it did not work for me in Immortal Pleasures. And I actually would have DNF'd this if it hadn't been a buddy read. So if you want to know more about that book and why it didn't work for me, more specifics or any of these other books, please let me know because like I said, this is rapid fire. So the next book I want to talk about, this may be an unpopular opinion, and that is The Ruins by Scott Smith. I ended up giving that a 3.5. I think that's a case here where it had been overhyped to me over years and years. And I'd seen the movie a long time ago, and I was extra excited to read this book because people always talk about how great it is as a destination horror and how the body horror really hits. And there were parts, absolutely, the body horror that is horrifying, but I ended up just thinking it was kind of okay. Um, Eh, you know, 3.5 for The Ruins. The next book I want to talk about is a folk horror book by one of my favorite authors, Gemma Amore, and that is White Pines. And I gave that book 4 stars. The next 4-star books that I want to talk about are a part of my Mallerman May vlog, which I will link down in the description box below. I gave 4 stars to Daphne. I gave 4 stars to Bird Box. I gave 4 stars to Spin a Black Yarn. And I gave 4 stars to A House at the Bottom of the Lake. And again, Josh Mallerman ended up being 4 stars for me. I wanted to read his books for the first time in the month of May because I wanted to see if I wanted to pre-order his newest book coming out later this month in June. And that is Incidents Around the House because I kept hearing people who had art copies say that it was genuinely scary. And I'm still on the search for something to really scare me. So obviously went ahead and pre-ordered Incidents Around the House after having a successful Mallerman taste test. The next book that was a 4-star read for me in May is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This one would have been 5 stars if it hadn't been for the fact that I could really see where it was going completely. And I felt like some of the foreshadowing was just hitting us over the head, and I would have preferred a little more ambiguity. And then another 4-star is The Reapers or the Angels by Alden Bell. And I do talk about this one in my Zombie-thon vlog, which I will link down below. And the last book that I want to mention in this rapid fire wrap up is Stephen King's newest release, You Like It Darker. So I individually rated these stories. I wrote a lot of notes about the stories in this book, and I gave this book 4 stars. There were some 5-star stories in here, but I'm not going to go in depth because I have a lot to say about this book. So I'm going to do a separate video for You Like It Darker. So be on the lookout for that. Again, I do apologize for this rapid fire wrap up. This is not the usual kind of wrap up I like to do, but my summer, or well, technically it's not summer yet, but it feels like summer here heat wise, but more importantly, my daughter is home from school, of course, for the summer. So that's going to change up a little bit of how much time I can put into wrap up videos. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you will subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate that. And as I mentioned earlier in the video too, if you would like to hear more in-depth thoughts about how I feel about these books, please let me know. I appreciate questions, dialogue, commentary. So have a great day or night, and thank you again for watching. Bye.